Hello there, Pixel Pushers. It's Sadiq Hussain here from the the Pixel Pushers YouTube channel. And here we're going to look at a HDR merge. Of course, it's the flavor of the month, high dynamic range. It's not something that we used to do a lot of with images, but everybody wants to have excellent exposure right across the shadow areas, the highlights, as well as the midtones. And of course, that's essentially is what HDR is for still images, and of course now for movies and television programs. All of our TVs, modern televisions, have HDR built in, and movies are made and mixed and processed with HDR in mind. I'm not wholly convinced that it is the way to go with everything, certainly with films and television, but it does add a particular dimension to still images. So let's dive straight into it. So this is a recent photo or series of photographs that we've merged using the built-in tool from Birmingham, my local city. And so this is HDR Merge made simple with using Affinity Photo. Now we'll reel all this back and just show you what we've done. Okay, so I'm going to close that in fact and start from scratch. Okay, so first of all, very simply, you need to have your various exposure images in the first place. So either use auto exposure bracketing on your camera, or vary one of the exposure variables on your camera. Take several photographs with regards to how bright or dark the image is, and then we use HDR Merge within Affinity. Okay, so I've just got 3 images for this particular exercise. So simply we go to File. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, keep this video short. File, HDR Merge is one of the automated setups. And then it quite simply asks where are the images, so we click on Add. But before we do that, make sure automatically align images is selected. Automatically remove ghosts, useful to put that in. Don't need to change anything else. But also you can decide to include tone map the HDR image. That essentially means that, as you remember, that in Affinity Photo we've got 5 personas. There's the photo persona, there's the develop persona for raw images, there's the liquefy persona, which of course is for manipulating pixels to making them really weird, and we haven't explored that much. And then we've got the tone mapping persona. The tone mapping essentially means playing around and experimenting with exposure, different types of exposure for images. So it lends itself, hence why it gives us this option, is do you want to automatically take the image once I've merged it into the tone mapping part of Affinity Photo. You can obviously do that separately afterwards, but let's tick that to say yes we do. Okay, then we want to select images, and I've got some images on here, so let me just go to where I was recently in here, and it's number 16 in my case, so you know where your images will be. Okay, so I've got those 3. Open those up. Those are the 3 exposures, and don't want to do anything else, just click OK. Okay, let that merge the 3 images together. So this is purely the exposure merge, which is another way of saying HDR image. Now it's taking it into the tone mapping persona of Affinity Photo, and that should just take a few seconds. Again, it depends on how big your images are and how fast your computer is and which software you're running. Okay, so you've got various in the tone mapping, and we'll cover more about tone mapping in a separate video, but within tone mapping you've got a few, sort of a half dozen presets here. So you just pick one of those presets. So for now I'm just going to pick there was one here called Grit, Urban Grit, Urban Bright, Urban Grit. I'm going to choose that one. Okay, you obviously choose whichever one you choose though, then you've got a whole range of sliders here on the right hand side. This is all within the tone mapping persona. Now you adjust those as you see fit to see how the image appears. And let me just zoom into parts of that image, and there's one called tone compression. We can move that. Local contrast is always useful about making contrast between areas more pronounced. Exposure, let's bring the exposure up. The black point, make the black points darker. Let's just move that out a little bit so we can see what we're doing. So don't want it too dark because it makes these shadow areas too dark. So we'll just bring that up. Okay, and then brightness, we can increase that a little bit. Contrast, we can increase that, of course, depending on what you want. Saturation, there isn't much color there, but you could change that. White balance, you can change. Shadows or highlights, again, you can look at the shadow areas, maybe bring a bit more shadows into the darker areas and just bring up the highlights. So you've got a lot of creative options and personalization options there. Once you're happy with all of those, and of course you can really go into it and tweak it, click apply. That'll then take that image into the photo persona. So we're now in the photo persona. Let's just center that. Command and 0 or Control and 0 on a PC. And you can see there's lots of artifacts on here. Now some of this is dust and dirt on the sensor, but some of it is light reflections, because there was a street light just above here, and of course you're getting this, and if you don't use a hood you can get some of that, but very simply do a new pixel layer and then pick the in-painting tool. Always do it on a new pixel layer, because that means that you're not altering the original, and also it means that you're not, you're doing it non-destructively. Now, what you need to remember is when you use the in-painting tool, because you've got two layers there, and the new pixel layer's got nothing on it, you really want to be sampling from the layer underneath. So up here on the parameters for the in-painting tool, you want to change it from current layer to current layer and below. Okay, and you might have noticed that it wasn't actually working, that tool is because of that selection. I need you to do that. Okay, and then you literally just paint over the blemishes and whatever they are to remove them. Doesn't it's very easy, but just takes a few seconds for each one. Now I'm going to delete this little bit of the building that's sticking out. Make sure I select some of the background so it can sample from it, and it will remove that really nicely, because it was neither in nor out, and that's not good on your picture. And then clearly you would just go through and do everything that you can to remove that. Now I'm not going to spend ages just removing that, because that's going to take up your time, and clearly I could speed this up and do it, but just to suffice to say, remove as much or as little as you feel that you need to. Always bear in mind, zoom in, change the size of your brush. Don't sort of just do it from a distance always, because you get a much better result and a much more refined result if you follow those instructions. Okay, obviously change the nature of the brush, the parameters, properties of the brush that you're using, because you are using a brush even though what you're doing is in painting. It is called the in painting brush, this tool on the left. So you to do that, that depends on your image, it depends on what effect you're after, and also it depends on how much you want to disguise the edit that you're doing. Okay, so I'm just literally just painting over each of the blemishes, and when it doesn't work, just go over it again, or change the size of the brush. Like for example there, I can just go over these spots and it will remove those quite happily. Okay, so just go through and obviously do all of those. So I'm just going to do these here, and then we're going to call that part of it done, but you go through and do all of them. So Command and 0 for centering it. I'm actually going to remove these up here. So if I do broad brush strokes, that should allow us to get through it a bit quicker. Okay. So it doesn't take long. This kind of sky actually, which is a bit bland, is a perfect candidate for dropping in your own sky photography. As I've said before, it's always a good idea to go out and take lots of photographs of different types of skies: bright skies, moody skies, cloudy skies, interesting skies, stormy skies, and then you've got a stock library of your own photographs of skies. Now we will be looking at that. In fact, I'll use this image to demonstrate it in the next video of dropping in a new sky or a new background, because it's very clean and easy to cut round these buildings. So that'll be a good start. So obviously there's no need to clean up these blemishes if we did that. So we'll do that on the next video, but I just wanted to quickly show you and demonstrate to you the HDR Merge option within Affinity. It's fantastic, easy to use, and of course you've got a huge number of variables in the tone mapping persona, which is over here. And if I'm doing this image and it didn't go into tone mapping, I can literally just click on tone mapping and it'll go into that persona, and then I'll be able to do it. Remember, all the blemishes are on this separate layer. So if I disable that layer, the blemishes come back, but they've been taken away on a separate pixel layer. It's always a good idea to do that. Clearly you'd merge it or save it as a JPEG at the end of it. Okay, hope you found that useful, and wait for the next video, which will be out in another couple of days, and we'll drop in a new appropriate sky behind that, or maybe an inappropriate sky, to see how weird and wonderful that looks. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.